genre.
Hello and welcome back to The Doctor's Companion. I'm Scott Corelli.
I'm Cass Fredrickson.
And I'm Nick Jimenez.
Today on the show, we'll be discussing Dot and Bubble, the 5th episode of Series 5. This is written by Russell T. Davies and directed by the guy who directed the episode last week. Same guy. Somehow the same guy. Yeah, very different style of episode, which is really impressive, I think. Yeah, so Dot and Bubble. This one seems to be kind of it doesn't seem like anybody has issues with this one. Like, it doesn't seem divisive. It feels very much like everyone is kind of like, either like, oh my God, I loved that, or like, yeah, that was good. You know, like everybody kind of seems to have like that kind of like, I don't see any negative reactions to this one. Which I was very pleased to see, because that has not been the case so far this season. It's been very divisive. Even Boom, there were people who were like, I didn't like that one. So I don't know. But what did you guys think? Nick, thoughts on Dot and Bubble before we get into the walkthrough?
Yeah. I mean, because I was just thinking, like, what an episode to be universally liked, because it's so weird.
Yeah, right? I know.
And bleak, and, you know, dares to have unlikable characters. And so, but yeah, no, I just watched the episode for right before recording. So I was scrolling back through the discussion on the Discord, and I love how much discussion this episode pulls from people, and even like online. It just kind of, as soon as it ends, it kind of makes you go back over everything you just watched and recontextualize it, and just makes you think about it more. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one, as dark and weird as it is.
Yeah. Cass?
I think this is the best one of the season so far. It's really, really good sci-fi. And I was like, it is like, I guess it's technically like Doctor and Companion Light, but like their presence is felt throughout the entire thing. So like, it's a really clever use of like, we have limited availability for our actors. Let's just stick them in front of like a green screen with a camera for like a day, you know?
Yeah.
And I was really impressed with this one, and I think the way that it's structured and the way like information is kind of like pieced out to the audience is really clever, which we'll get into in the discussion. But yeah, overall, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but like this is a good episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really, really great. It is interesting because I think that like the ending being what it is, and the Doctor being played by the actor who he is, I think people are sort of lumping everything into like the one thing that is very obvious at the end. But I do think there's a lot of commentary on this episode, not just the racial proponent, though that is like a big part of it, and all of it can be related back to that. But I do think that it is interesting to me that this episode, Russell T. Davies has said numerous times that he wrote this for the Moffat era. Yes. See? Yes. That's and so the fact that he wrote this episode for the Moffat era only to be like Moffat be like, we can't fit it in because like we don't have the budget for this, because this was like new technology, this like sort of screen time type of episode, like I don't even know if Searching had come out yet, or during the Moffat era, that movie, the movie that's like all screens, so yeah, so it's just interesting because clearly, he would have done another pass on this with the new Doctor, and probably brought in all of those racial proponents to make it more interesting to him today than what he was doing probably, 10 years ago when he originally wrote it. But I do think that that's interesting. And I think that there is something there to pick at that I do want to talk about as we go through the walkthrough. Because as important to the story that racial component of the theme is, I do think that there's other stuff going on as well. That is all sort of like tied in, and I don't know. It's a really, really, really strong episode. And probably like the first episode that has reminded me of Doctor Who since Space Babies, an episode that everybody hates. It's like everybody's like least favorite episode of the season, which is so crazy to me. But I mean, I get it, but also I'm like, come on. I don't know. But yeah, like, cause it's very like, oh, there's a monster, and or monsters in this case, and the Doctor's trying to save people. And like I look at all the other ones, and it's like, not really, none of the other ones are really like that. They don't have that kind of typical Doctor Who. They're all kind of like very special episodes, they all have like little gimmicks and things like that.
Sure. This episode almost has a chameleon circuit on it, where it feels like a disposable episode of the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
right.
a well done but disposable episode of the show. And then it reminded me a lot of Night of the Living Dead, the ending, where it is this this emotional wallop where you're like, oh, I wasn't even aware that's what I was supposed to be thinking about. But then Galdine too, I hope I'm saying that right, on the Discord posted, like, to them, this is the first story that felt like it could have only have happened to 15, because it's like about him coming to terms with his identity in this new incarnation, and how that has tragic, infuriating repercussions to his mission as the Doctor. So it's meant to surprise and recontest, and it's like, it reminds me so much of quotes I had read Nchudigatwa say about how he didn't want to ignore the Doctor's race as 15. And seeing that, and like, we'll talk about, you teased this last week, Scott. This was the first episode that he filmed.
Yeah. Right.
Which is, but it almost makes sense that the ending is so powerful, and he's so good in that ending, that it almost does make you want that to be the only thing to talk about in this episode. But like, there is so much going on in this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really goes to show how strong that ending is, and how like how powerful it is, that Galdine would say like, oh, this is an episode that could only happen in 15's era, despite the fact that it was literally written for another Doctor's era,
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that rewrite was so powerful that it feels that way, even though, so it's just, I don't know. It's fascinating. It's a really cool episode. I'm glad that it's happening now versus back then. But yeah, because I think you're
like
right.
11 or 12.
Right. I mean, like the 12 one would have been obvious if it was during 12, because it's like, oh yeah, he's old.
Ew.
Ew. Yeah, right. Yeah, because they're like, right, because they get kicked out after they're 27.
Hello, it's me. I'm old. I'll help you.
Right. But also he would have been like, you don't want any help? Okay. He would just say, peace out.
Clara's like, can we do that? Can we just leave? Like,
he's just like, well, clearly they don't want any help, so let's get out of here.
Wow. So he chooses every time to do something.
It's actually really funny if that was like in the early part of the Capaldi era. That would make a lot of sense. Like for Clara to be like totally being like, wait, what? You're not even going to try to help him? He's like, nah, fuck them. Like you just, you're like, wait, who are you? You know, like that. Yeah. Where she's like still trying to figure him out. It would totally fit there. But I do think I couldn't find the exact quote. I tried to look it up just before we recorded, but I think everyone seems to believe that it was during the 11 Amy Rory era, like season 6 era is when it was supposed to be. The episode was supposed to happen. So anyway, I don't know. So
interesting. Like it's kind of like that Boom meme that I sent the two of you of like, you know, doctors who would have died immediately if they were in Boom.
Yeah.
And because like I'm thinking about like, oh, Amy in this story, Amy going through this, and that would bring interesting things out of that character, you know?
Yeah, very true. She would be probably a lot more frustrated. Oh, you know what? I wonder if that's exactly what it was going to be. If it was going to be like a Brexit thing. Because she's Scottish.
Wow.
Yeah. I wonder if that was the original intention. If it was like kind of a Brexit thing, and she was the one that was frustrated. And every time she came on screen, the girl was like, ugh, Scottish. Look at her stupid red hair. And he was like, you know, I think maybe we could make a stronger choice here. I don't know.
I think it speaks to like the versatility of this episode too, because I could see it happening with Capaldi and Bill.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
True. True. Very true.
That's the episode on difficult mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So. Yeah, and I again, like Dylan Holmes Williams, director of last week's episode and this, wow, really good, like really good director.
Yeah.
Like I hope they come back, because like, yeah, wow, very impressive. I don't know what else he's worked on, but like the fact that he directed these 2 episodes and they look and feel completely different. It's just very impressive to me. Also, this had to have been one of the most expensive episodes of the season because there is not I don't think that there's like maybe like a dozen shots in this entire episode that don't have visual effects. Yeah, because of the
the bubble
and the dot. I mean, I'm sure the dot's not real. I'm sure the dot's CGI.
I mean, like the bubble, the dot, the Fine Time itself, like that colony they were on, it looked great.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looked big.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if that's why this got pushed further into the run. It's just because it took so long to finish the VFX. Yeah. I don't know. In any event, okay, so we start with everybody's favorite new Doctor Who character, Lindy Pepper Bean.
Okay, first off, the absolute onslaught, the never-ending barrage of cool Russell T. Davies names in this episode.
Oh yeah, true. Very true.
Just one after the other.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, so so she is asleep and then she wakes up and turns on her dot and bubble and then just starts living her life in a bubble of faces and people yelling at her and talking to her and the thing telling her which direction to walk and all this stuff. I was like, I can't. I was like so exhausted by the time the cold open ended.
And to sort of, walk this, I'm so excited to kind of walk this this world down. Cause like listening to you, immediately you're reminded of waking up and the first thing you look at is your phone, and like immediately being met with like the feed and the page. But what's interesting about this listening to you, Scott, is it kind of feels like, in retrospect to Lindy's feed, influencer and friend were kind of indistinguishable from one another.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, friend and follower, and like they used a lot of all of those that terminology throughout. Yeah. It was yeah. It's pretty crazy. And yeah, like you get like all these little like squares, like guess who, you know, like it's really, that's what it was reminding me of.
Cass, what
But-
did you think of like just the word, the way that looked, just like the visual, like the concept of it?
Oh, I really liked the way that it looked. I thought it was a really clever use of like the phrase like social media bubble. And in a way that like didn't feel immediately patronizing, you know, like that's like the concept, like, you know, like, oh, I have all my friends with me all the time. Currently, like, and the way that like everyone is like broadcasting to each other like constantly, like that felt like, I don't know, it's like really good commentary on like social media and like how we like the balance between like what our private lives are and then like what goes online, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, as someone who's not on TikTok but sees TikToks.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I'm always surprised at how much of them are just people in their living rooms or in their kitchens just like talking about pop culture or history or whatever, politics, but they are kind of broadcasting. But it's just like super, they're not pretending or putting on any kind of like, yeah, they're just like in their home, just like on their couch. And it's like that instinct to broadcast and become kind of an entertainer while at home living your life.
Right. Yeah. I really like the design of everything and the way that it works. It's very overwhelming in a way that is for me extremely off-putting, but at the same time it's done in such a way that you're like, you understand what the comfort of it would be, which is that you're surrounded by and constantly reminded of how many friends you have. Of just like I can talk to anybody that I want at any time. Like it's like we're all like just walking through the world together, you know, is what it feels like. And I was like, yeah, I could see where you would get addicted to that feeling, you know, if you know, grew up inside this world. Yeah.
I don't want to skip ahead too much, but there is this moment that really stuck out to me where she's in her cubicle or office and she sees the monster for the first time, like devouring someone. And the first thing that she does is she puts the bubble back on and she looks at the I think it is Eric September or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
And he's doing the Itsy Bitsy Teeny Weeny song. Yeah. And she's like singing it to herself while she's crying. And it is somewhere between like a cigarette, like she needs it.
Yeah.
And like the pacification of like, this is all too much. I need to just look at my phone and just kind of like numb my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I guess I also want to talk about like, one of the things that really struck me about this episode, because it's one of the complaints about like the OG Russell T Davies era, which is how campy it all was, campy and over the top. Whereas I think that this episode sort of like boiled something down for me that was present in previous episodes, but was like especially present here. Because all of these characters are very big and campy characters that we're meeting on this in the bubble, but there's like it's almost like he's found a way to like ground it tonally, more so than what he was doing before, where they really felt like the characters would sometimes just be like too far away from the ground, you know, in terms of the camp. Whereas this, it feels like he's bringing the ground a little higher. He's making the whole world a little more campy, which is then making them feel closer to grounded in terms of like the tone of what we're feeling. And it just feels so much more consistent, I think. Cause I think a lot of these characters feel very much in line with the kinds of characters he was doing in his original era, but they
Yeah.
would like stand out more back then, whereas here it doesn't. They don't feel that way. Does that make sense? Does anything I'm saying make any sense?
No, I think that does make sense. They remind me a lot of like the like characters that are in that Big Brother house or whatever
Oh,
from
yeah,
the 9
yeah,
finale. Like you could
totally.
put any of them there
Yeah,
and like, you know,
yeah,
and you can put like the cute, I don't remember her name, but like the cute little blonde girl that follows 9 around, like you could put her in this
yeah,
and she would,
yeah,
you know.
yeah.
He has empathy for these vapid, shallow characters that are kind of campy and are kind of like loud and garish
Mhm.
at times. But he seems like, not to like psychoanalyze a writer, but like he seems like he has a love for pop culture
Mhm.
and like trash culture, just
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
the fact that he would care to like get like a celebrity daytime host to play herself in Church on
Right.
Ruby Road, you know.
Right. Or yeah, it's so funny. You're right, and yet my mind was still in the Big Brother episode, so I was thinking of the Weakest Link host. So
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
so he's been doing that. Yeah, you're right. You're totally right.
Or Army of Ghosts has that really funny Coronation Street joke of like, I don't care if it's you again, Freddy. You know.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I also think it's like I clearly like we don't know that much about any of the other characters. Like we really only get to know 2 of them on any like meaningful level. But from the flashes of all of these people that we meet in her bubble, it does seem that like many of them are coded as gay or queer in some fashion. And I
Yes.
think that was actually like I was very impressed when we get to the end and we realize like, oh, all these fuckers were white and they're racist, and the fact that like, but they're totally accepting of like gay culture and queer culture is so like that coming from a gay man, I just think was like very interesting and saying like, no, we're not above that. Like there are racist gay people. Like that is still a thing. And I'm not going to like pretend that we're all perfect because we're not. And I was like, wow, that's good for you. Like it would have been very easy for him to not do that,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think anyone would have batted an eye at it. So I don't know. What do you think, Nick?
Or going back to like shelf drawers full of stuff, like it. I've read takes, reactions saying that this could be read as a satire of Gen Z, and it's like, because like I was half joking, but the thought bubbled up of like, are they gay coded or like, is that just Gen Z? Of that's just naturally like their aesthetic or their personality and their language,
sure,
and like Yasquid and all these like the assimilation of like queer verbiage and like people of color, but so then it's like to take that to the end of that, it's like, well, yes, they may be like bright and cute and colorful and like look very accepting, but there is this dark undercurrent beneath the sugary and do not and like just we like to pretend that the youth are becoming more and more aware and more inclusive, but there's the fear of something else surviving.
Okay, so this is a perfect time for me to talk about my other sort of reading of this, which is again related to everything else that we're talking about, which is the sort of Gen Z commentary, the Gen Z, Gen Alpha commentary, people who have never not remembered having the internet, basically, those generations. Yeah. And exactly what you're talking about, Nick, of like this sort of like faux acceptance, this like whatever, but they're also the ones that are the first to be ready to cancel anyone for anything at a given moment based on very little information, right? And so there's like a very like I think that's what the bubble thing is really a reaction to, of just like, well, I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to perform the thing that is going to get me brownie points with the people that follow me and the people that I follow. but it's like performative. It's not necessarily something they truly believe. They will say it is very loudly over and over again, but is it something they truly believe or is it not? And then you have these things where, like, you know, when she is in the office and he's like, you need to like get up and walk, you know? And she's like, I can't. Like, she runs into her desk a bunch of times. There's like that bit later where she like runs into the sign a bunch of times because she doesn't know how to walk without it telling her what to do. And that to me was like, oh, she can't avoid obstacles. And that made me think about like how much criticism there is of that generation, of those generations, about like they can't handle anything. Like anything real, they can't handle because they're so on the internet, in their bubble, surrounded by people telling them what to do, how to feel, what to think, that they can't actually make any decisions on their own.
Without consulting. Well, like, hold on. What are people saying first? Before
Exactly.
I have my, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Cass, go ahead.
Oh, no, I think that's a really interesting reading. That didn't really occur to me. Like the you know, like so okay, I have like a really funny anecdote about this. And I'm not Gen Z, but like I was out shopping and I was deciding if I wanted to buy a piece of clothing, and like the person working at the store was like, "Oh, so what did you decide?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to consult the group chat first," like completely unironically, because like you know, like my friends live in my phone. But like, yeah, no, like the like the lack of like critical thinking skills. You know,
Right.
and like, which I think is really interesting that like we have this character in like Ricky September, the like really generic like pop star who like reads.
Yeah.
He like just turns off his feed and like reads, and like that's why he like is able to function, because he has like those critical thinking skills and he's able to like walk by himself.
I also think that it's not a coincidence that he is easily, of all the characters that we meet in this, the oldest.
Wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
It's so funny when watching the episode, just on a surface level, it reminded me of like, you know, I've lived in Los Angeles for almost a decade now. Could I maneuver around the city without Google Maps or without Waze, you know, telling me the best way to get to work? And, you know, sometimes I'm able to be like, no, fuck the map. It's telling me to go left. I know that's a dumb decision. I'm going to go right because I want my nice morning drive, or I know my environment well enough to control what kind of experience I want to have. But sometimes I'm like, help me, map daddy. Like, I just want to get home.
Yes, absolutely. Oh man, somebody needs to create a map program called Map Daddy. No one would ever use anything else. We got to copyright that. Anyway, yeah, you know, because it's just like, it's like, you know, that thing of how, you know, people just don't know. You hear so much of people like, yeah, I have trauma, and it's like, you don't know what trauma is, you know, like that is not what you think is trauma, is not actually trauma. It's just the worst thing that's happened to you. But like
the absorption of therapy speak and using phrases like gaslighting or grooming without looking into what that actually means and what you're actually saying. And I think that there's a lot of that here. And also just the thing of like, it's so easy now to just avoid things you don't like, which in this case happens to be Black people. Sure.
And people
the second
older
Lindy,
than 27. Yeah.
Right. Like rewatching that episode in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, the first minute a Black man enters her feed, she's like,
Blocks.
do not want, get out of here.
Yeah. And it's because it's so easy to do that. And so you have these people who don't know how to operate in the real world where they're not in control of everything.
Right.
And so it's just so fascinating to me that there's a whole reading, I think, of that. But then also they're like, but also what this ultimately leads to is what he's saying is like a very easy way of creating very racist people, because they're not forced to interact with anyone that they don't recognize.
Yeah.
In themselves.
Yeah.
And so like, regardless of like we don't know what her actual beliefs are, right? We get like she's got certainly a vibe at the end of like, no, I don't like whatever you are. I'm not into it. But do we know that she is like? We don't really know like what. We don't know that
we get,
she's like got like Nazi swastikas somewhere. You know what I mean? Like she's
Yeah.
not. We don't know how racist, or if it's just so casual over so long that it's just like. Looking at you makes me uncomfortable, and I don't like being uncomfortable, so you're blocked. You know,
the man at the end says like, "Come on, or he'll contaminate us." At the end,
Yeah.
right.
Which is like, we don't know how seriously to take that line. Like, how
Right.
literal is he being?
Right,
You know, what
right.
kind of propaganda has churned through the centuries?
I think that like because of the way that because she's like, you can see her considering going with them, but like the peer pressure of because I think the guy at the end is being 100% genuine.
Mhm.
Like he is a racist.
Yeah.
But I think like her passiveness and her like her want to like fit in
Mhm.
is ultimately like, I mean, that's still racism, but like it's like you know what I mean? Like she's not challenging it in any way. She's just
Right.
kind of going along with what her friends or her
Yeah.
friends are saying, you know?
Mhm.
And I find in media especially, I appreciate it when racism is treated not as like fucking like Decepticons or Death Eaters, like
Yeah.
a thing that you secretly are, but rather a weapon or a mindset that one can use or systems can use to their benefit.
And this is a story about how easy it is for that to happen to people, like to be groomed through that system and have these beliefs without really even knowing why or how
Right.
they started, you know, or having
Under a
really any
very-
justification for them.
Under what is seemingly a very soft, sugary, easy life where like they
Right.
work for 2 hours a day and just party the rest of the time.
Right.
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 I was also thinking because I didn't like realize that the doctor was the only person of color until like it was like confronted at the end. And I think that speaks to like, because I feel like it works as a commentary too on like the pervasiveness of like whiteness as the norm in media, but
Mhm.
also like in Doctor Who specifically.
Oh yeah.
So like this, it's just like working on like so many different levels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a phenomenal episode, and what's so crazy is like it would have been good during the Moffat era still,
Yeah.
but it just kept adding layers the longer he waited to make it, until now we have this Black Doctor that it just like it like puts such a fine point on everything that he's commenting on in this,
Yeah.
that it just like it becomes this like really like thick text of like theme and
and the culture caught up with them as well. I mean, I think about thinking about the role that social media played in my life around the Clara era or the Pond era of the show. I'm like, yeah, I definitely still had my friends on my phone and I had Twitter, but yeah, it's just the culture is we've that was before the pandemic, and we all started leaning on social media in a new way, and yeah, it just like a wine, it just grew richer and richer with time.
Before TikTok was a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Back then, it just would have been like I don't
Twitter
even know.
and Facebook.
YouTube, I guess. It just would have been
Yeah,
like
YouTube.
YouTube. Yeah, that would have been the idea, I guess. Yeah. So it's just this is a killer episode.
I want to now is as good a time as any just to really celebrate the performance of the actress playing Lindy or Lundy. Excellent work. She reminded me. I mean, just like
Callie Cook is her name.
Callie Cook. Like she reminded me of so many like YouTubers that I follow. Just that kind of affectation, and then watching how she kind of, I think so much of the final episode, of course, like relies on her face and
Yeah.
what we read or don't read into it.
Yeah. I also think the decision to have her ostensibly murder Ricky September in a roundabout way. I truly believe, I think up to that point, because you're used to a certain type of story from Doctor Who, you're like, oh, she's gonna be fixed at the end of this.
Yeah.
And that moment is to basically set you up for the ultimate ending so that you don't feel bad. I've seen so many people be like, oh man, the first Doctor Who character, I wish he would have just like shot the boat and let it sink. You know, like fuck those people. Like he should have drowned her with his bare hands. Like, you know, like, and it's because I think they were allowed to, the episode gave them permission to feel that way by having her murder Ricky. Which is like, it's just an interesting, like, it's like, oh, that happens. And you're like shocked. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, fuck her. You know?
It's the first hint that, this isn't going to go down the way it usually does on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which I think is like, you know, and the fact that happens even prior to learning definitively that this is a racist society, is really interesting. Because even Ricky September, when he meets the Doctor, when the video turns around, you even see him react a second of like, whoa, not a white face, you know, like you see it, but then he being like a red person and having like clearly having his own thoughts to a certain extent.
Yeah.
You could see him like push it away.
He's clear-pilled.
Yeah, you can see him pushing, but I'm just saying, like the performances in general
absolutely.
are just so strong and so well thought out, you know, and so well directed, you know, not to give him not enough credit, you know.
It just hit me that, you know, with Nchudigawa being in his 30s, he's also too old to fit into their society as well.
Right. Very true. So I think my single favorite shot of this episode, it's so dumb and random, but when Ricky September is like looking at the, you know, oh, when we call Earth, they're going to send their tanks and their pesticides. And he's like, oh no. And there's a shot of a barren, hollowed out wasteland that is Earth. And just one single proud monster just looking out over the horizon. Yes. so good. But I thought that was interesting because that's also like the third or fourth apocalyptic, like world-ending thing that we've seen this season.
Yeah,
almost happening or mentioned. You know, like last week we got the nukes. Right, that is a possibility. We had in the Devil's Court, clearly, you know, he literally takes her there, and then here we have it again. So I just think that that's interesting that keeps popping up because what does that mean? And that's got to be connected to something. There has to be a reason that keeps coming up almost as much as Susan Twist does.
Which, you know, would we like to talk about that?
Sure. Any theories on Mummy?
So in this episode, she's playing Mummy, and this is the episode where Ruby and the Doctor. There's this moment where it's like, oh yeah, I remember her. She was that person. It's like, no, she was that person too. And they're like, oh, we're gonna save this for later.
Yeah. Yeah. But in terms of this episode, the Mummy of it, do you think she's real? Do you think Mummy's real? Or do you think she's like an AI thing? Or like when
someone on the Discord compared her to Mother from Futurama. Like,
yeah.
Some kind of like corporate entity more than like a familial mother.
Right. Yeah. Like she's clearly like the boss, right? Like she's clearly like who they're working for, I assume. But like what the purpose of any of this is never made clear.
I think that's an interesting like because I thought that was like her literal mother. But if it is like an AI or like a program or something, like I think that's a really interesting not exact one-to-one tie back to like Space Babies with the nanny.
Yeah.
How there is a real person behind it, but it's like, you know, like I'm pretending to be a program. So like I'm wondering if it is supposed to be an AI, that's like kind of like a take of like, you know, the phrase like I was raised by the internet, you know?
Yes.
Like if that is supposed to be what that is, or
Mm.
I'm not sure.
Gentlemen, I'm like brain blasting right now. It's just I'm connecting dots, you know, because I'm kind of finding a new reoccurring theme of this season, especially in this episode, which is like how technology infantilizes us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Like going back to space babies, taking
Yep.
about as literal as you can make it, and
Yep.
boom, had examples of like us giving away our freedoms to this new parent, this new god of technology that's like pacifying us to where like a grown woman can't like walk in a straight line without the help of technology.
Right.
And what do kids love? What do kids need to grow and learn about the world around them? Fairy tales.
Interesting. Yeah.
Stories.
Yeah, because those teach you your earliest morals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's really cool. I really like that. So Susan Twist as the Ronnie confirmed.
Yes.
That would be nuts.
But yeah, because like I guess not to bury the lead, but like well, the lady we thought was the Ronnie is definitely not the Ronnie. She seems to be some sort of owl lady. So you know, oh well.
We'll see.
Whiffed again. Yeah. We whiffed it again. They took the football away again. Anyway.
We've been Ronnied.
I
I believe Claudia on the Discord compared this to Paradise Towers, which I definitely agree with.
Mm.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Absolutely. Yeah, I really liked Ricky September. I think he was a really fun character. I think it was Norman who said that he was sort of like he could be depicted as like a stand-in for the Doctor himself.
Yeah.
And that like he's white and he's like the guy that you would imagine is the Doctor, and he like takes her hand and rescues her and saves her. But he's white, so he feels safer to her than the actual Doctor. And you know, the commentary that we're talking about in terms of like how Doctor Who is changing. Like I was actually thinking about this. Because I was like looking at, you know, I often get like on my Instagram feed, I'll often get like, you know, Doctor Who stuff because it's clear that I like it. And
the algorithm's got you.
Yeah. The algorithm knows who I am. I like Superman, and I like Doctor Who right now. That's my thing.
I want all of the Superman and Doctor Who memes you have directed at that man.
Yeah. Now. And anyway, so I was looking at that, and I was looking at this like sort of you know, one of those posts that it's like, oh, look at all the Doctors that we've had, right? And it, you know, starts with Hartnell, goes all the way to Gatwa, and I was like looking at it, and I was just thinking like, you know, I would say that it is very unlikely that we will ever, without a really strong, like, oh, what the fuck you, no, we will ever get another straight white guy as the Doctor, ever. Like, I don't think we will ever do it. And I was thinking about that, and I was just thinking, like, it's fucked up that it took 15 Doctors to get where we are now. Or even if you want to get to, like, 13 with our first female Doctor, right? And I was just thinking, like, yeah, no, the real fucked up thing is that we didn't have multicultural Doctors from the very beginning, right? But it's just so... I was just thinking about that, and I was just thinking about how there are so many people who watch this show still out there who are uncomfortable with Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor because he's black and because he's queer. And then we have Ricky in this representing this white Doctor, and going back to what Cass said about this episode being this sort of commentary, and a lot of the season being a commentary on Doctor Who itself and how it's evolving and how it needs to evolve. And this episode is once again commentating on that. But it's just so, the whole thing was just so interesting to me. I was like rolling all of this around in my head. This like stupid Doctor Who, like, look at all the Doctors meme that I saw, made me start thinking about all of this. And I think it's because I had just watched this episode and was thinking about that and was like, yeah, we're getting so much more juicy stuff now the real problem is that we never got this juicy stuff until now, you know?
Mm.
And that's the whole point of the Ricky thing and the sort of theme of this episode, which is just that, like, you know, the bigots out there that are Doctor Who fans, they want to ultimately see themselves on screen. And when they don't, they feel like they're missing out on something, right? That's why they were so upset about the 13th Doctor being a woman, and why they're so upset about the 15th Doctor being black and queer. But, you know, the fact that they're not recognizing themselves on screen and having an issue with that, you know, they don't have the wherewithal or the empathy to connect that to everyone who doesn't look like them watching Doctor Who and not seeing themselves, right? They get that opportunity that, you know, guys like me have had since the show started. But now, the other aspect of that is that we're also gaining all of this new stuff as a result of changing the race and or sexuality of the Doctor. We're like getting to play with all of these new themes that we never would have gotten the opportunity to do. And it all sort of like boils down to like what's going on here with Ricky and Lindy. And ultimately, what those people want is to be Lindy and find a white doctor that they can run away with and have him save the day. She doesn't trust the Doctor, but she does trust Ricky, and she's interested in Ricky, and she is comforted by Ricky before and after she meets him. So I don't know. There's clearly a lot of Doctor Who commentary going on here, in addition to just like cultural, societal themes. There's so much juicy stuff in here that is being messed around with, and I'm just really impressed with the whole thing. And these are the types of things that we would never have been able to get before the 15th Doctor. And it's cool that this new era is giving us all of this stuff that we've never been able to have before on the show.
Yeah, it also took way too long before we got a Alien Bridgerton episode.
Also true. Also true. Because I don't know if the Clockwork Men aren't really like aliens per se.
They're from the future, but
Yeah.
they're not like alien. I don't know.
Yeah, that's like the closest, right? That's like the closest equivalent would be Girl in the Fireplace.
Yeah, I would say so.
Time period wise.
We get a lot of Regency, like kind of like Regency era type Doctor Who stories, like just in general in New Who.
For sure. Yeah, like Haunting of Diodati.
Yeah.
Well,
But
that's
that's not like-
Victorian.
That's Victorian. That's
yeah.
true.
We got a lot of Victorian episodes.
Yeah.
We got an abundance.
Little moments that just made this feel like, I think the reason the wallop hits is because it does feel like just a really solid episode of the show up to that point. I loved Millie. I love Ruby and the Doctor hyping up Lindy hooking up with Eric September.
Oh yeah.
How they were all like kind of like crushing on him together. It's just little moments like that. I just love the energy and dynamic of this era of the show so much already.
I do. I think that like I am starting to realize a criticism I have for this season so far, which is that like my favorite thing about Russell T Davies as a writer is character, and how you'll have so many moments throughout his era where the Doctor will be like, okay, this is what we have to do to fix the problem. And then he goes over and he starts fixing the problem. And then like somebody walks up to him and like starts talking to him. And like, he just like has a conversation with this person about like, you know, his beliefs or his feelings about humanity or all of these things or whatever it is. And we're really getting to know him. And the same thing for the companions. And I don't really get their relationship really at all. Like there's no moments, I can't think of more than like a couple of moments where they have like time to just like talk to each other. I think that's why I like Space Baby so much, because it's the most that feels that way.
Like they're just hanging out and having an adventure like around them.
Yeah, and there's moments
Yeah.
to like pause and like talk between themselves without the plot getting in the way. Whereas I think most of the episodes this season have been like very plot forward. And that's like, I think my only disappointing thing about, I think this season is just like, I wish there was more of just like them. I want to get to know them more than I feel like I'm getting to know them. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think I agree with that. Because like I feel like because of last week, with 73 yards, like we have a really good handle on Ruby as a character, but then like, 15's not in that. Like they're barely in this, and like the only thing we see is like what the main character of the episode, Lindy, sees.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm hoping that like maybe we get more like hangout. Like this is what their relationship feels like in the next episode. Like prior to because the finale is 2 parts, right?
We don't really know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's 2 parts because
I mean, yeah, I'm assuming 2, but I don't think it's ever been. I don't think it's been confirmed.
Wait, well, this is episodes. Dot and Bubble was episode 6,
5.
5.
Yeah.
Okay. So then it's Bridgerton episode
6.
something in between, and then Empire of Death is the name of the finale.
Yeah. The Legend of Ruby Sunday is
The Legend of Ruby Sunday.
Oh.
Yeah, is the penultimate.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think I agree with both of you, and something maybe a reason, potential reason for that is every episode so far this season has been written by a man who has written a lot of Doctor Who episodes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat, and it's about like what is going to get that guy to his laptop to write his 50th fucking episode of this weird show.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I don't want to write just them hanging out and talking, because I've been doing that for 20 years. And so I'm very excited for next week's episode to not be written by Russell T Davies or Stephen Moffat.
And it looks like the most like down the middle like just a Doctor Who episode, like they're bird monsters, like, like it's just like bird monsters in Regency era. Strap in, everybody. It's a Doctor Who adventure.
Well, I mean, I think in all fairness, like last week when we were talking about the trailer for this week, we were just like, oh, this seems like some middle of the road Doctor Who bullshit.
Yeah.
So like I'm hoping that like maybe
That's
the
true.
trailer is just bad.
I don't know.
No, yeah, because like I want my Unicorn and the Wasp fun too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I just wish I wish the show, everyone is complaining about how, I'm seeing a lot of complaints about, they think all the episodes should be like longer, like 10 to 20 minutes longer. And that is just like a bunch of young kids with no media literacy, not understanding what pacing is. Which is that like, no, you don't need more stuff. You just need what's there to be paced better than it is currently.
Yeah.
Which is breakneck. Everything's breakneck paced, which is like fun, I guess. And might be even a studio note of like, no, kids don't like the slower moments. They have ADHD and like, they have the internet. And so like everything needs to go at a breakneck pace or they're going to call it boring.
Disney, please. I just need 2 characters talking about their feelings.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Right. I know. Yeah. That's all I want.
I think that I think what it is like we're feeling the shortened episode count.
Mm-hmm.
Like because maybe Russell T Davies feels like there isn't room for what might be considered like filler, quote unquote, or like things that aren't furthering the plot immediately, or things that aren't furthering the plot, in like future episodes.
Right. I'm just really glad that this isn't Ruby Sunday's one and only season, because if it was, I would be like, I don't even know what her relationship with the Doctor is. Really.
Yeah.
Like we know who she is because of the last episode, right? We get her,
but like her relationship, the dynamic with her,
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I can't pinpoint it really because I barely know him. And
the morsels that we get, even in this episode, are so good.
Yeah.
And even, in Boom, where it's just like, the morsels that we get are so good. But I'm hungry for just some New Earth kind of tooth and claw, just them dicking around, having fun.
Yeah.
But not too much fun, not too cute.
Then we get space babies.
No, I was saying, I was like,
Tooth and Claw.
Tooth and Claw and Idiot's Lantern are like the two episodes I really don't like. So
not too much fun. Hey,
not too much fun. All right, hey.
I don't know, like I because their relationship does not seem to be romantic in any capacity.
That's true.
I don't feel like I'd mind because like like I was obsessed with them dressing up and playing around in like the 60s for like the couple minutes that we got that.
I just didn't feel earned to me. It was my biggest issue.
Or like them crushing on the same guy, and this was kind of fun. Of like,
I like that. I just wish we understood
Got
where
more
any
of
of it was coming from.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Like I don't know where I don't know what their friendship is like, because we don't really get to see it very much. It's just frustrating. Because I want to love them so much, and right now I just like I'm vibing with them, but that's kind of it. I don't really have strong feelings. I like Ruby as a character, and I like 15, especially like the performance that we get between the end of this and his performance in Boom. I'm like, oh yeah, because like in a lot of ways, right? Boom is the 15th Doctor's 73 yards. Basically, in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So like we get them kind of separately, but we don't know what their deal is together. And that's the part that I'm like really frustrated with.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
The way that I think about 11 and Pawn's dynamic, or 7 and Ace's dynamic, or 10 and Donna, of course. Like those there's a very, you kind of know who they are to each other.
Yeah. Like there's no moment, like there's no, I don't know, like he's not leaving any time for moments of like the Doctor and Donna seeing each other through the windows and mouthing things at each other,
Yeah.
Like I don't know why he's not having fun with that part of the show anymore. And he's just so kind of hyper focused on like, I don't know, doing like a special concept each episode. So I don't know. And then we're adding another character next season. So it's like, God, I really hope like these last 3 episodes, like we understand these two, their dynamic
before the new one joins.
Yeah. So anyway,
Cass, what's some Disney Plus content that does have a lot of 2 characters just talking about their feelings?
What?
Loki.
I know. I need to watch that.
Written by Kate Herron.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm really excited that she's
directed by Kate Herron.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm really excited that she's
Walken.
co-writing next week's episode, because I loved Loki season 1 so much. So we'll see.
And like my favorite moments of Loki are little character bets more than like Big Bang Boom.
That's so funny, Nick, because I thought you were going to say X-Men 97.
X-Men 97, that too, for sure.
It's like, I mean, you're right. That's like literally all that show is, pretty much. And it's great. Anyway, I just wish that there was more time for those moments, rather than just the little flashes here and there we get.
And that's something we as a culture are yearning for, like the death of the filler episode, and like TV just being this cozy thing that you can just check in and watch for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. By the death of the filler episode, you mean like we're anti that. We want to bring the filler episode back.
Yeah, we want to bring it back.
Yeah. Right. Totally.
Just a whole episode where there's just a car wash at the end of the day they all have to get to.
Yeah, like I always go to like that 3rd episode of The Last of Us, which is an absolute masterpiece, and people would call it filler. And you're like, but it's filler. You oh my God. Like because it's just so frustrating, because it's this beautiful masterpiece of an episode of television, and they're like, filler, waste of my time. And I'm like, what?
Well, yeah, because it's like, it's not, I haven't seen The Last of Us because I can't do zombie stories, but like it's not relevant to like the 2 main characters, right? Like,
or
it's
so
like
they
a
think.
Side.
Yeah, it totally is relevant. It's extremely relevant
right.
thematically, but media literacy being a thing, they don't
because I think
appreciate thematic relevancy.
like the like the word content.
Mhm.
Like, I'm consuming this story as fast as possible so I
Right.
can move on to the next one.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Instead of like I'm I don't know. I'm like watching this because I'm enjoying. I don't know. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not even a guy who I think listening. It's no offense to listeners because I know listeners who literally do this, but like people who like watch stuff at like a quarter speed or whatever, like or like making
Oh,
it go faster.
Oh, 1.5 speed. Yeah.
one and a
Yeah.
half speed
Yeah.
Yeah.
of like so I can like consume the story quicker.
Yeah.
And it's like, but this is it's ultimately at the end of the day about pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
right.
And taking a break from working or doing or worrying or whatever and sitting down and enjoying listening to a thing or eating a thing
Yeah.
or
Mhm.
watching a thing.
I will never watch anything at a faster speed. Unless I'm crunch time on Classic Who and it's like early era, then I might. And then I slow it down for certain sections. But when they're just like pissing around a room for like 5 minutes, I'm like, I can watch this at 1.5 speed. I don't think anyone's.
But
gonna
you're
get
like you're rewatching that. Like, you're
That's
not
true.
consuming that story for the first time
That's
at
very true.
like
That's
1.5
very true.
speed.
right. But what I was gonna say is like I definitely do listen to podcasts at a faster speed. But as Nick said about the pleasure of it, that is why I do it. Is because I love what they're saying and what they're talking about. But sometimes people have certain like speech mannerisms and things that just drive me nuts. And I'm like, well, I don't want that to ruin this show for me. So by speeding it up a little bit, they suddenly talk a little faster. Their ums and uhs and blah, 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 blah. Like that, those don't scream out at me as much, you
Right.
know, because it doesn't bring the podcast to like a dead halt. And so I will podcast to podcast, all of my podcasts I listen to at different speeds. Like
That's really
whatever is like specifically working for me for that particular show, because Nick's right. It is all about pleasure. It's not about consuming as many podcasts as I possibly can.
But none of those are like, I guess my point, like, none of those are audio dramas. Like, those are
Right.
just people talking.
Right.
Like,
Audio drama,
you know,
I would never do that with.
like, it's not like a narrative that you're like speed running.
right.
You know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Or like, or the Last of Us of it all is, episode 3 of The Last of Us is a self-contained episode where we don't really see Ellie or
Joel.
Yes.
Yep.
And so it's just, so if you think the job of watching a TV show is like consuming the story as quickly as possible so you can like, I don't know, read a Screen Rant article about all the things you missed or whatever,
Yeah.
versus like, when we used to watch Doctor Who just to be like, Doctor Who, like, or
Yeah.
Mhm.
Cheers or the Vampire Diaries or whatever it was. And
Yeah.
it wasn't like, this one sucked because I didn't get any juicy little story meat out of it, which like I could relate to. Sometimes episodes of Dragon Ball Z felt like that, but
Oh,
Right.
certainly. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. So yeah, all interesting things to think about and talk about.
Thought and bubble.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen people call 73 yards filler. You know? They
I don't
call
like
it
those
filler because the
people.
doctor's not in it, and ultimately the plot of that episode doesn't matter because it didn't happen. Yeah.
That's
So,
true, it didn't
okay.
Yep.
happen.
Yep. Yeah. So I've seen people call it filler. They call it filler. And it's just like, I don't think words have meaning anymore. That's what I think.
I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway. Anyway. All right. Well, any other thoughts on this? Is there any like specific sequences that we want to talk about? Because we just like did not do the walkthrough at all.
That's fine. We
yeah.
just watched it. It's like
Yeah. Well, and it's also just like, I don't know. She's staring at her screen for most of the episode, you know?
Hilariously easy to avoid. Those aliens really lucked out when they found this society.
Well, they were.
That's true. They were engineered, right?
Yeah, they were engineered. They're like viruses, basically, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Oh yeah, they were engineered by the dots because the dots are like,
Yeah.
fuck these racist pieces of shit. The dots are the true hero of this. They're the true heroes. But I will say Bethany made a good point. It was like, why create all of the aliens when they all could have just simultaneously just like bullet through everyone's head? Like,
Oh my god. The visceral reaction I had to that
yeah,
moment
Yeah.
was nonsense. Oh my god.
yeah, yeah. I know.
Shout out to Gothic Paul.
True,
R.I.P. Gothic Paul.
true. Yeah. The fact that his last name is Paul was interesting.
Gothic Paul.
Gothic
Oh,
Paul.
I when I was watching it and we didn't know the twist yet, as to what the monsters were, because she talks about how like this like fantasy land vacation for like 17 to 27-year-olds. Like I thought the monsters were eating the people who were too old to be here until like they're like, oh no, they're eating them in alphabetical order. Because I thought it was just like, no, we're like purging the people who are too old to be here.
Yeah.
So I'm glad it wasn't that, but like I felt like it was gonna go in that direction.
Sure. I loved the monsters eating the people in the screen. It was very like macro terror coded to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like too the dots, consuming all of their content, whether they like it or not, because like they're just there, ultimately deciding like, yeah, all of these people need to go. This just needs to this just needs to end.
Go in alphabetical order, just down the line.
Yeah. Which is yeah, I thought that was a fun reveal because like they realized that it's alphabetical order, but they were like why would these like organic monsters, one, know what the alphabet is?
Right.
And two, like why would they bother doing it this way? And that's how they realized like, oh right, it has to be a machine that's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are the only machines. But do we think that that's like is that some kind of commentary on like the fact
AI?
Yeah, well no, like on like, on viewers kind of like turning on people as soon as they realize like something's bad about them or whatever. I don't know.
Sure.
I feel like there's something there. In terms of like, we consume content until we realize that the person is like not who we thought they were, and then we are like, yeah, no,
Cancel.
thank you. Yeah. I don't know. Any thoughts, Cass? You're thinking about it, but
I guess I just am not following the connection. Like I missed a step along the way.
I think Scott's comparing like the dot observing these young people to like the act of watching someone until you like don't like them anymore.
Oh, and like physically canceling them.
yeah. Right. In this particular case, because they have
funny.
no other option. There's no
Right,
other.
yeah.
They
They
can't
can't
just block or
unsubscribe.
unsubscribe. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't unsubscribe.
They're unsubscribing from life.
Yeah, they unsubscribe them from life.
Oh no.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, I think the monsters are my only criticism of the episode because it does feel like a hat on a hat, an unnecessary hat on a hat.
I like that the monsters are kind of the MacGuffin though.
I guess
it kind of tricks you. It's part of that luring you into thinking like, oh yeah, I know Doctor Who.
That you know where it's going, and then
No, and I like it for that reason, but the fact that there's no explanation for like if they can just hurt you as themselves, like
right. They could all just kill you the way they killed Eric September or whatever.
It also might be a thing like how oh, what's there's like the rules of robotics or whatever, like the like the robot can't turn on
right
but
like
she overrides the rule, which is just like so she forces that thing to act. You know what I mean?
Okay.
When she reminds
she forces
her of,
the dot to turn on him because he is an outlier.
Oh, I see.
His name starts with a C. You skipped one.
Yeah.
Okay.
His name isn't.
Well, but it was trying to hurt her first.
Yeah, and so
That's
she's like,
true. That's
"You skipped it. Remember, his name starts with a C." And she's like,
No,
"Oh,
no,
you're
no.
right."
I know. What I'm saying is like the law of robotics doesn't like,
Yeah,
come
yeah,
into
that's
account
true,
because
that's
of
true.
that. Because it was
Well,
already
maybe
trying
I
to
don't
hurt
know.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're in the bunker and the slug things can't get. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Going back to just this being well directed, I loved this. Maybe just me like being like grasping at straws, but the fact that everything starts off so bright and Easter colored on the surface, and then as Lindy descends lower and lower into the bowels of this world, it becomes more grimy and dirty and gross.
Yeah. Yeah, when she's getting on that boat, like the vibe I was getting was like it was like a real like River of Souls coated. Like,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean?
That's interesting. Yeah, because they are like the doctor's convinced they're all gonna die.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
They're literally like
Crossing into the underworld, yeah.
crossing into the underworld.
That's interesting.
That is what it feels like to me. Absolutely. I almost wish like Susan Twist was there as like the person.
Come along.
Yeah. Like you know.
Like the ferryman. Like
Yeah, as the ferryman. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Really just put a fine point on it, you know?
She's in like a Grim Reaper outfit.
Yeah, maybe not that far. Maybe if it's Easter colored.
Yeah.
Well, it's like,
oh my God, pastel goth, like Grim Reaper. Like,
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I think Lindy was even wearing like a veil or something, or like a hood.
Yeah.
And so it almost felt like, you know, like Tolkien, like the elves passing out, and like there's something tragic. It's shot like it's a waste, like it's sad. You're not like, oh, those fucking racist idiots are gonna get got. I know it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's what I think that's what a lot of people are reading into it.
Yeah,
But-
yeah,
I
no.
mean, because I feel like it
yeah.
can be both.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like it's like, oh, I'm sad about this character like not being able to overcome or unlearn her like racism, and like
Right.
it is a waste because the doctor's like all life is precious,
Right.
even those shitlords on the
Yeah.
boat.
It's
And we
not.
feel that. Because
Go
we
ahead,
were
Dan.
rooting for her at some point, you know.
Yeah,
and we
yeah.
wanted
Yeah,
her. We
yeah.
wanted her to succeed because that's our nature as humans.
Right.
Right.
Right. It's interesting that her ignorance is treated as a tragedy.
Mhm.
Like that is how it treats it, where he's like, no, like it actually isn't her fault that she is this way. Like he like recognizes that to a certain extent, but he's like, but I can't change
do
her
anything
mind.
about
I
it.
can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like
yeah.
society has failed her
Right.
when you if you look at it a certain way.
Mhm.
Right. Right. And you know, in a way, right, that's like kind of is that not the majority of racism, right? Is usually because your parents were racist and taught you to be racist. And it's like, you could always overcome that if you wanted to. But I can imagine if you're taught it as a fundamental moral,
Right.
that is going to be a difficult thing for you to overcome.
Or even
Yeah.
to take it beyond the parents, like the way
Right.
that, like, wow, for some reason, you know, how many of us have seen the prompt on Twitter of like, how many of you never had like a black teacher? Or,
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Right.
like, wow, why that? Well, it must be a total coincidence that everyone in my area, you know, that's
Is
not
like affluent and like white. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Man.
man, drawers
Crazy.
full of stuff.
I know.
Mhm.
I know. No, I love all of the themes and subtext and text, and I love all of that stuff in this. I just wish I wish this season, and I'm talking about the season as a whole, but like, yeah, I just wish there was more like slow character moments, a little bit more
Mhm.
than what we're getting so far.
With them together.
With them
not them
together.
alone.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully we get that in the next 3 episodes. That would rule. I would love that. They feel like, from everything that I've seen from these episodes, it feels like you're going to get a lot more of that, because like, you know, Regency era, I'm like, there's a lot of time for them to like be like in a dark hallway by themselves, whispering amongst each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so like, there's a lot of room in there. You know, I just, I am very hopeful for these last 3 episodes to like give us more of their characters and their dynamic than we've gotten so far. So
To end on some shameless speculation that I saw minutes before recording, there's like some light fan speculation that for some reason Jonathan Groff's character next week is Captain Jack. And
weird.
And so, but then someone really quoted that and was like, "You think for a second that if they were replacing John Barrowman as Captain Jack, he wouldn't have made a stink about it on social media at this point and made some kind of just heard some sad news. I guess people can't take a joke anymore."
Oh no. Yeah, unless they just didn't tell him because like they don't have to.
He's gonna find out.
Yeah,
like all of us.
He'll find out. He'll find out publicly at a convention.
At a con.
Yeah, at a con while he's on stage in a Q&A. Yeah. Yeah. But well, that would be interesting. Honestly, I wouldn't be opposed to that. I like the idea of Jonathan Groff as somehow a new Captain Jack. I just don't know how that even works. I guess
they can't regenerate. Like, he's never been able to.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't. Not everybody's a Time Lord. Everybody, like, relax.
Anybody
so
can
funny.
regenerate.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh man.
Someone's like a regenerated Mickey or something.
Right. No, I mean, it would be, I think it would be more likely that he would be a new incarnation of the meddling monk than who is a Time Lord that you have not met, Nick. Then Captain Jack. I just don't think that makes any sense.
If we get, even Jonathan Groff aside, if we get the return of the meddling monk before we get the Ronnie, I might riot.
That's funny,
man. Anyway,
you're holding up hope. We're holding out hope. There's still time.
The Duchess of Pemberton.
That's right. We're getting her Doctor Who debut next week.
Yeah, Indira Varma.
Kind
of that's a stacked cast. You know, Jonathan Groff and Indira Varma in the same episode. Like that's powerful stuff. Also, next week's episode directed by the Devil's Chord's Ben Chessel.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So we'll be able to.
That'll be fun.
We'll compare and contrast.
I hope there's another fucking musical number. How do you like that?
I don't. No, I actually think there is going to be a Regency like dance number. So
I feel like, I don't know, like if you're going to have another musical number, like Jonathan Groff's the one to hire.
Sure.
Because, you know.
Yeah. I'm also fully convinced that ballroom that they're in, that seems like for the majority of the episode, based on the trailer, is literally the music room from the Devil's Chord redressed.
That's really funny.
I think it's the same set.
That's great. That's Doctor Who, baby.
Yeah, it is. Hell yeah, it is. All right. Well, Rogue next week. In a weird tie-in to X-Men 97.
Hey, sugar, it's me, Rogue. I'm here too.
God, you could have played her. Sounds just like the actress. Anyway, all right, Rogue next week. Looking forward to it, and join the Discord if you haven't yet, and we will talk to you then. Bye, everybody.